free. And then the next thing, it was like this, the room opened up next to me, and I could see Jesus sort of just next to me. I could see his sort of bronze feet, and it was all light. And
everyone, and welcome to another episode of God is Not a Theory with Ken Fish. I'm your host, Grant Pemberton, and on today's episode, we're doing another highlight, a spotlight of all of the incredible things that are happening in the Orbis Ministries world that I think that everyone should know about. I was talking to you, Ken, at the beginning of the year, and I was saying, I'm still learning about all of the fun things that are going on, and I think everyone else should be able to figure those things out as well. So today we're highlighting which part of it, Ken? I believe it's the school. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got Joanna McKay, but she goes by Jo, as our guest today. So we didn't get her from out there in the wild blue yonder. She's our own registrar for the school. A lot of our students that may be listening have had interactions with her at one time or another. Everybody who knows Jo loves Jo. And I thought it would be fun to just kind of do an introduction so people can get to know her a little better, maybe than they would in a typical school-related interaction.
well, thank you very much, Ken, for having me on the show.
We're glad to have you with us, Jo. We're glad to have you on the show. We're glad to have you inside of Orbis. One of the things I usually start out with is I ask people to tell us a little bit about how they came to faith, and maybe beyond that, how they became interested in Christian service. I know your background enough to know that, you were at one time a nurse. So, to be with a ministry that does healing is not completely off the grid. But tell us a little bit about how you came to faith. Tell us how you became interested in working for ministries.
Sure. So thank you, Ken. Feel very honored being here. I've watched this podcast for since its inception, so I'm very excited to be here today. So I was born and raised in New Zealand. I don't know if you can tell by my accent, but so I grew up going to the Baptist church. My mum was Baptist. My dad was Christian Scientist, actually, until he met Mum. And when I was in my early teens, I went to I decided that I wasn't that interested in being a Christian anymore, and I sort of walked away from the Lord for a few years. And then when I was in my later teens, I got into a bit of trouble. My mum forced me to go to youth group, and it was the local Presbyterian church, and so I went along under duress, and I met the brand new pastor there. His name was Doug Poe, and he's a lovely Samoan man, and he just talked to all of us kids and said, if you're ever in trouble, here's my phone number, give me a call. And so anyway, I got in trouble that week with my parents and was very just distraught. And I rang him up, and he came straight over. And it actually was Valentine's Day, on this day 35 years ago. And
wow.
And he led me to the Lord. And so today's my spiritual birthday of 35 years.
That's awesome.
Great timing. So Valentine's Day. So I've got immersed into the youth group there at Knox Presbyterian Church in Lower Hutt, and Ken actually met Doug Poe years ago. He's passed away now, but so it was an interesting church. A bunch of the elders the year before, so that was 1989. I think it was 1988. John Wimber, I think, had gone through New Zealand and done a tour, and so a bunch of these elders had gone up to Auckland, and had got lit up by Holy Spirit, came back speaking in tongues, prophesying over people. And so that's sort of what I got immersed into when I was a brand new believer. And I remember going on a youth camp in my late teens, and Margaret Cornish was one of the elders, and she'd been to John Wimber's conference. And so she's speaking at the conference, speaking about the spiritual gifts, and she she calls up all of the new believers who hadn't been yet baptized in the Holy Spirit. And so she calls us all up. And so there were 10 of us up the front. And so there was me there and my sister. We didn't even know what being baptized in the Spirit was. And so she goes down the line, laying hands on everybody. And one by one, we all hit the deck, and including me. And so I remember just being knocked to the ground. She didn't knock me to the ground. It was Holy Spirit, and just being filled with the Holy Spirit, and felt like liquid love pouring through me, and the most amazing thing. And my sister got the gift of tongues. So she was yabbering away next to me, and I was really annoyed because I didn't get it at that time and had to wait for a while. So that was my introduction to spiritual gifts. And then, I decided I was going to be a missionary, and I studied nursing in New Zealand, and then I went and travelled in England for a while, in London, and then came back to New Zealand, and then my dad got transferred to Melbourne, and so I decided I'd rather live in Melbourne than London, and so I did midwifery training in Melbourne. So that's how I got to Melbourne, and I've been living in Melbourne or nearby ever since. And I've never been a missionary. I was going to be a midwife missionary over in Africa, but I've done a lot of other sort of Christian service in the meantime.
You're a missionary from New Zealand to Australia.
Yes, that's sort of as far as I got. But I worked as a midwife for many years, and it was a really rewarding career.
Yeah.
And and I've had, I don't know if you want me to talk about that, but I've had sort of 2 spiritual births. So that was my first one. And then just to put some context around how I met Ken and came into working where I am. I worked for years as a midwife. I got married when I was in my early 20s, abusive relationship, divorced after 2.5 years, and sort of lived pretty mediocre Christian life. I was pretty lukewarm, went to a Baptist church, and then got remarried within a couple of years after that, and then had 3 babies, one after the other, and then I moved up to the country, and so I was going up and down a little town called Yakandanda. That's where my husband was living with me and the kids, and I got pregnant with so I've got 2 children, 2 boys and a girl, who are now 20, nearly 18, nearly 16, and had the one after the other, and I ended up with postnatal depression after my little girl, after my 3rd child, and had severe postnatal depression. I was really feeling very distant from God, and was attending a Baptist church at the time up in Wodonga, and then ended up getting so unwell. I ended up in hospital for over a month. I was admitted to hospital to a mother baby unit, and my baby was 4 months old. My marriage broke down again, another marriage, and I was left just feeling like I was the biggest failure in the world. In the pit of depression, suicidal, wondering how I was going to manage. I couldn't manage my children. My parents took on care of my boys, so they were aged 4 and 2 at the time. My ex-husband, we did a bit of counselling, didn't work out, and he went back up to Yakandanda, and I ended up having to go on, antidepressant medication. My parents were looking after the boys, and we lived with mum and dad for nearly 18 months, and they sort of helped nurse me through. And I just remember crying out to Jesus, like, where are you? I just felt like I was in this dark pit, couldn't get out, didn't want to be here, felt like I was, the world would be better off without me. And it was just a nightmare. And anyway, God's good. So I was put on antidepressants, medication for anxiety as well, and sort of got nursed through this time. I had counselling, very holistic approach, and then my my beautiful sister introduced me to some prayer ministers, and I had no grid for prayer ministry, didn't really know what that was, but I was just desperate. So I went along, and these three ladies, Carol, Jean, and Sonia, prayed for me and led me in a healing, and brought Jesus into memories that were, very painful, but just helped to bring healing to my heart. And that was a huge part of my recovery. And in the process, I met Noel Kibigting, he's spoken at conferences with Ken before, and yeah, he helped in the prayer ministry process as well, and the healing, and I went to Living Waters meetings, and met lots of different people, and then so I was on medication for years, and probably about 4 years. And anyway, again, it was around Valentine's Day in 2012. A couple of friends invited me to a deliverance meeting. Didn't know what deliverance was, except from reading the pages of the Bible, never seen it before. Thought it would be a bit weird, but went along to have a look. And my friends were...
What you did with babies. You deliver babies.
Well, I did deliver a lot of babies. This looked quite different though, Ken, although it was quite messy. So I went along to check out this deliverance minister. So this is a guy from Los Angeles. It wasn't Ken. And anyway, I saw the raw power of God in this meeting. Like, it was a packed house. It was at Catch the Fire Ministries with Danny Nalia, was some senior pastor at the time. And there were demons manifesting. It was loud. It was crazy. And yeah, just sort of was like, oh wow, this stuff's real. And so my friends and I went back the next night for another meeting, and during the meeting I felt sort of a weight on my chest, and the ministers up the front, he says, oh, anyone who's feeling heaviness on their chest or any of these things, come forward. So I obediently went forward, and he said, oh, come up on the stage. And so I found myself up on the stage with them trying to cast demons out of me. So embarrassing, with the microphone in my face. And it was, anyway, interesting introduction to deliverance. But and nothing left, and I got down off the stage, still sort of manifesting, and my friend Noel was there. He wanted to come along and check out this deliverance minister. And anyway, I sorry, this is a very long story, but I got off the stage, and I'm like, okay, I've heard the gospel, I've heard that I have authority in Christ, so I'm going to kick these things out myself. And I know Ken teaches against self-deliverance, but in this case, it actually did work. So I'm kneeling down on the floor. There's people everywhere. There's worship music going on. There's demons, manifesting everywhere. And so I'm like, okay, God, show me what to do. So he gave me the 4 names of demons that needed to be casted out of me. And so I did that. And had a bit of a cough, and just felt so light and free. And then the next thing, it was like the room opened up next to me, and I could see Jesus sort of just next to me. I could see his sort of bronze feet, and it was all light. And I could see Noel was just across from me praying for me, and he said that later he could see all the sort of the glory of God all over me. And I just had this amazing encounter with Jesus, and he just spoke to me, and, he touched my mouth, he touched my hands, he touched my feet, and sort of really commissioned me into ministry at that time. And not that I had any clue what it would look like, but it was just the most powerful encounter. I just fell in love with him. And my 2 friends, Michelle and Lizette, who were there that night, they had encounters with Jesus as well. And so we sort of all just left that meeting absolutely in love with Jesus. And we started meeting in each other's homes every week to worship. Anyway, I've been going for ages. Ken, did you have any questions about that, or did that answer your question?
No, it's great. It's a great introduction to how you were drawn from, I guess, a nominal Christian life to one that was spirit empowered, and the Lord was meeting you and addressing your needs. And I guess you didn't quite say it this way, but I think you indirectly pointed at it was so profound and life-changing for you that, you know, it caused you to leave what you were doing, which was working as a midwife, to start pursuing Christian ministry.
Well, it wasn't quite what led me to actually a marriage breakdown, and having to raise 3 children as a single mum is what caused me to leave midwifery. I couldn't do shift work or anything, so I had to let that career go.
Yeah.
But but at the time I had that encounter, I was still a stay-at-home mum, and we just started pursuing Jesus. And so this is leading into how I met you, Ken. So Noel was there, and like I was so hungry for God, and the next day I sent him a message. I went straight to Koorong Christian bookstore after the kids went to school, and I'm looking through all these books, and I sent him a text like, how do I learn more? What books should I get? And he says, oh, have you heard of Bill Johnson? And I had not heard of Bill Johnson. I didn't know anything. And so he got me to get a couple of books. And so I just sort of hungrily devoured everything I could. And then, and he invited me, I think it was the following Sunday, to go to a meeting called Overflow, which was in Lilydale. And Russell Bratton was the leader of that meeting, and it was on every 2 weeks on a Sunday evening. So I went along to this meeting, and it was to commission Noel. So a number of our listeners will know Noel, and who passed away a couple of years ago at the age of 40. But anyway, Noel was being commissioned. He was having to go back to the Philippines, which is where he was from, and so we it was like a commissioning service for him, and so got to pray for him, and so then I met Russell at that meeting, and you know, saw Holy Spirit moving, and saw deliverance, and saw them praying for healing for people, and I just wanted what these people had, and so I started going every 2 weeks, and I invited friends along, and then one day I go along there, and there was a guest speaker, and his name was Ken Fish. And so I had never heard of you before, Ken, and so I'm sitting in there, and I remember vividly the message you taught. It was on the Gideon anointing.
Oh, wow.
And then you called, and I'd never heard any Bible teacher unfold the scriptures like Ken. And although I did follow Derek Prince, I think Ken and Derek Prince would be on a par with, you know, the theological teaching, but very different. So anyway, I went up. Ken invited anyone to come forward who wanted the Gideon anointing, and I think it was everybody in the place. And so I went forward, and Ken, I think, just laid his hand on me and released this Gideon anointing on me, and I crumpled to the floor, probably down, shaking under the power of God for a while. And I just remember thinking, whatever he's got, I want. Like, I just want that power of the Holy Spirit. And so I just, every meeting that Ken came to Melbourne for, I'd go along and attend the conferences and other overflow meetings, brought my friends along. Received. Ken's never done any prayer ministry for me, but except for, you know, the laying hands on after the service to release an impartation or something. But it was a powerful time. And I remember Ken has talked a lot about the Australian outpouring. And when we were in it, we didn't realize we were in it. I just thought, you know, this is the Holy Spirit. He's always going to be here, and it's always going to be like this. It was a really rich, full time. But sort of the tide went out over the next few years, and that sort of outpouring left. But it's on its way back. Yeah, so that's how I met you, Ken. And I remember also we invited you for a dinner one night. Remember going went up the Eureka Tower, and there's a big group of us from so we did a big overflow group dinner and invited Ken along as our special guest, and we had a great meal together, and and took him up the Eureka Tower to see the view over Melbourne. It was a really fun time, some good memories.
Yeah. I remember those times, number of them quite well. Lots of great encounters, lots of great stories came out of that time frame. And what most of our listeners wouldn't probably know is that I knew Russell Bratton from back stateside, and around numbers, maybe 20 years before, when I was coming to Australia, not just with John Wimber, but with Russell's former pastor, Dane Yarborough, who's been on this show. Dane was pastoring at that time in the Dallas area, and that's Russell's home stomping grounds, although he's now an Australian citizen. And you just never really know where these relationships that you make at one season of your life may take you at another season in your life. And I think sometimes we're a little too cavalier with those connections. And I think the other thing that happens is people, Paul says we should not regard anyone after the manner of the flesh. And I think there are times that people actually do that. And what that means, at least at this moment, it means is that they treat other people in a fleshly manner. They kind of despise them. They blow them off. But you just don't know when the Lord is setting up a divine appointment. And, we have this phrasing about some have entertained angels at unawares. True enough. And some have sometimes entertained people who will be very significant in their life later on at unawares. And if they don't have the wisdom to recognize what Jesus called the hour of your visitation, sometimes the moment passes you by and you just don't know what you missed. That's not to stir FOMO in anybody. It's more to say, because I was friends with Russell years before, and then when I started coming out to Australia, he was running Overflow. So he invited me to come. And through that, I met you. And through you, I've met, I'm not sure how many people, but quite a few, for sure, quite a few. And again, all of that is because we want to be sure to honor those who are among us, even if they're sometimes very different from us. And we might not immediately see, why would I be friends with this person?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm very thankful for the friendship that I had with Russell. Like, he used to do a lot of prayer ministry during the week. He was probably the top deliverance minister in Melbourne, like the most effective. And I would often go out with him and another female friend, and we would go out and do prayer ministry for people. And I learned a lot from him. Yeah.
Well, so I also remember one time being at Overflow, and you were sitting a few rows back on my left as I was facing the crowd. And maybe you were 4 or 5 rows back. I don't know. I don't remember that clearly now, but it was a little bit back. You weren't front row. And I think you had 4 friends with you. And I pointed at the whole lot of you and I said, the Spirit of God's on this whole row. And all of you basically either fell, pogoed, or slid out of your chairs and ended up in a heap. And were pretty much incoherent for most of the rest of that part of the service anyway. Maybe for the rest of the night, but I don't want to overstate it. So I'll just say for that part of the service. So there have been a lot of those kinds of interesting divine appointments where, I don't know, seemingly the Lord created a rendezvous with destiny. And it obviously had more destiny on it than just, oh, here's this woman, Jo, who comes to the meeting and brings friends. It ultimately became, you're now working with me in Orbis, and actually on multiple levels. Jo does a lot more in Orbis than meets the eye. I mean, I introduced her as our registrar, but she's one of those people that is like the glue that holds an organization together. And she's been my lead intercessor for several years. So I have a lot of respect for Jo McKay. I don't see her that often because we live on different continents. But as Orbis has gotten busier and grown, I see you when I'm in Australia, and these days you come to the US a couple times a year too.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I know people think that I must have all this interaction with you, Ken, but it's normally, you know, one phone call a month or something like that. It's not heaps of interaction. But that's okay. But it's good. I get to catch up when we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Some people, wonder at times, how does somebody find, in this case, her way into a specific ministry or role? So you were working for a ministry before you came full-time with Orbis, and for a while you were part-time with both of us. Tell us a little bit about your journey towards ministry, how that gelled for you, and then, let them know how I talked you into joining us.
Sure. So yeah, what did I do? I got back into the workforce when my kids were old enough for me to leave them, or and I worked for a builder in this dodgy job for a few months, and then I went to Bible college. So I went to Stairway College, and then at the end of that, I started working for Alan and Helen Meyer of Careforce Life Keys, and that was such an honor to work for them. They're amazing, amazing couple. They've been in ministry for years or decades, and so yeah, worked. They do courses as well, and Alan's. They're probably definitely their most popular course is called Valiant Man, and it's designed for guys that are struggling with pornography addiction. And so, yeah, just every day I was talking to guys on the phone about their addiction, plugging them into courses, talking to distraught wives. It was, and they run other courses like divorce recovery. I was a facilitator for that. And and anyway, so most people who are listening to this probably know Kate Seiden. So Kate worked with Ken for a number of years. She was his personal assistant and managed his international team trips, and then she resigned from both of those roles in 2019, and then remember, Ken, you invited, I think, did Kate invite me to apply, or you invited me? Anyway, I applied for the role and had an interview with Ken, and there were other applicants as well, and I was successful. And so I was applying for the international team trip coordinator role, which I was going to do alongside the part-time work that I was doing for Careforce Life Keys. So I started that at the end of 2019, and then I get a phone call early 2020 from Ken, and just saying, oh, look, I'm just starting up this little school of ministry, and I'm just wondering if there's going to be a few administration tasks around it, and do you think you'd be able to add that to your workload? And I'm like, well, how many hours a week? Oh, only a couple of hours a week, probably. It's not going to be much. Well, anyway, Ken, he launches Orbis School of Ministry, right? And it was with the Heal as Jesus Healed course. And right at the outset of COVID, so everyone was in lockdown, people were looking for things to do. And so, the school had this grace on it, I guess, at that time, or still does. But so the enrollments just poured in, and we're suddenly having to manage all these students that I don't think we were expecting, or I certainly wasn't. And so we had to work out what we're going to do, how to run the webinars, how to manage cohort groups. We needed more teaching assistants, and we really were building the bridge as we walked across it. And I feel like we're still doing that sometimes. But so that was full on. But we were in lockdown, and I was trying to manage these team trips. So Ken had a few team trips scheduled for Chile and other countries. And of course, every trip got cancelled because all the borders were closed. And so I feel like the queen of cancelled trips. Like, I never got to go on. I've only been on one international trip with Ken, and that was to Israel just over a year ago, end of 2022. That was, and I ended up getting COVID on that trip, and had to be in sort of hotel isolation with a third of our tour group. So yeah, not the highlight of my ministry career. Although the trip was great besides that. Yeah, so anyway, I was managing trips that they kept getting cancelled, and but the school was growing, and I was juggling my other work as well, and lockdown at home, but yeah, then as we came out of lockdown, things were getting busier, and I started running around after the kids again, so yeah, so I ended up resigning from Care Force Life Keys, and just had the 2 roles with Ken and through Orbis Ministries. And then the school just has kept on growing and growing, and I found that I was doing more than full-time hours between the 2 roles, and it was getting too stressful. And so I asked Ken if I could drop one of the roles, and he said, pray about it. I want you to be happy, and just, you do whatever you're called to do. And so I prayed about it and asked the Lord, which role do you have for me? And I just really saw him handing me the school like a baby. He's like, this is your baby. You've sort of grown and nurtured this baby, and I've just had such a connection with the students, and I couldn't walk away from that. So I handed the other role over, and I've continued just helping to run the school, along with a number of other roles that I do through Orbis.
Yep. Yeah, you do. The school is your biggest piece, but you do a lot more than run the school for us. And for sure, the work that you do is indispensable. I mean, we would not have the success we have without your attention to detail, your diligence. You work remotely. You know that, and I know that, but others might not. So you're in Melbourne. I'm in Los Angeles when I'm in Los Angeles, and we couldn't function without you doing your job. But on the other hand, there's no possibility of looking over your shoulder, so you have to be able to self-manage. And I think that's part of being faithful, that many people don't realize in life. Is Jesus says, if you're faithful in little, you'll be faithful with much. And you're very faithful with what you do, whether or not anyone's there looking over your shoulder. And it shows in the work that you do, and it shows the fact that you don't miss deadlines, and it shows in the fact that you proactively think of things that, I don't have to tell you every single thing you need to do. So yeah, I think you are a paragon of faithfulness in fulfilling a task that the Lord's put into your hands.
Well, thank you, Ken. It's an honor to be working for Orbis Ministries. I often get people say to me, how come you're on their team? Like, you're in Melbourne, they're all in America. Surely there's someone in America who would be qualified, more qualified than you to do that role. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's lots of people that could do this role, but I'm the one that God chose to do it, or Ken chose as well. And yeah, I also wanted to add, look, I volunteered for a few years before I was taken on staff. Like, I still have boxes of Ken's products, his resources, stored under my bed, because that's the only room I've got. I don't know if you knew that, Ken. So when someone in Australia wants a CD or a DVD or a MP3 card, that's where they're stored, and that's where they get posted from. And yeah, also the intercession. So I was just thinking about that today, Ken. Like, soon after I met Ken, I was remember you telling us, Ken, that you had a group of personal intercessors and invited people, if you wanted to join, to let you know. And so I just felt, I really need to be praying for Ken. And so I remember sending an email and, sign me up. And so I joined the team so Ken's got a group of personal intercessors. And so I joined that group, and we receive Ken's personal intercession updates periodically when he has the time to send them. I remember when I was at Stairway College, we had Leif Hetland come to visit, and he was speaking to us. It was back in 2016. He was talking about his own personal intercessors and the 3 different levels of intercession, and the ones that got his prayer letter and just the very general prayer points, and then there were the the level 2, he called them, that received his personal updates and prayed a bit more deeply into his needs. And then there were the level 3 intercessors, and they're the ones that saw around the corners and knew what was coming and received prophetic revelation from God. And he just said he couldn't do his ministry without those intercessors. And I just felt so convicted. Like I remember emailing Ken and apologizing and saying, look, I've been an intercessor of yours for a few years now, and I didn't realize that was there was that level of intercession available to me, and I've never sort of prayed for you that way, and I'm sorry, and I'm going to really seek God to do that. And so yes, I did. I asked God to show me around the corners and to give me prophetic revelation, and I think I may have been having some prophetic dreams before that, but they definitely started coming afterwards. And I'd get these dreams with Ken in them, and they wouldn't mean much to me. And I'd send them to Ken, and he knew exactly what they meant, or they have specific numbers in them that meant something. And just sort of would surprise me every time. And yeah, it was soon after that Ken asked me to be his lead intercessor, which I don't normally tell people, Ken, but it's out there now. But so, and I didn't know what a lead intercessor was. I don't know if I still know, but it's just been a journey with the Lord, and just trying to be faithful with what I've been given, and faithful in prayer, and now, trying to gather more people to get a prayer shield, really solid prayer shield around Ken, and keep this ministry moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, Joe plays a really important role in everything we do, and it's not always visible to those on the outside, but it's very visible to me. Joe, give our listeners just a minute or two on what it's like being inside the sausage machine, especially in busy seasons when we're signing people up for new classes. Once we launch a class, things get somewhat quieter, but there's still kind of an ebb and flow of questions from students and other administrative matters that come up. They just seem to, and every now and then I'll have you send out a supplemental email or whatever. So, but anyway, give people a sense of what your days are like.
Well, but even before we get to that, I think it'd be really important for people to know just how many people are a part of the school, and what's the total, that you're having to manage in this short run of life cycle that it's been on since, I guess, 2020, we're saying, right?
That's right. Yeah. Is that okay, Ken? Shall I share that? Yeah. So we've got over 18,000 people who are enrolled in the school, and these are mostly people who have enrolled in one of the free mini courses. So so they're all on our contact list, and we keep in touch with them. And then we've got about well over 1,000, heading towards 1,500 students who have purchased a course in the school. They're not all current, so some would just buy one course and not come back, but they're quite few and far between, actually, where sometimes people will buy one course just to try it out, and then they'll come back and do buy the follow-up courses, or they get hooked and they come back for more, or they decide they want to be on the Orbis Prayer Ministry Network team and come to Immerse, our student training conference. So yeah, we've got a lot of students who are very engaged, actually, in it. So yeah, it's a lot of students to juggle. I'm constantly trying to work out, not missing people, and making sure, we're in contact with the right people at the right time. And it gets very busy leading up, especially when we're launching a brand new course like the one we're launching next Tuesday. So that's Winning Souls and Making Disciples. So yeah, we're very excited about that one. That's with Ken teaching alongside Christopher Ledesma. So this is the first time Ken will be presenting a course with someone else. And Christopher is a prolific evangelist and disciple maker. So his content's going to be amazing. So yes, that course launches next week. And I often find the enrollments start off fairly slowly, and I send out a few emails to let people know what's coming this is your deadline, this is the deadline. And for the last day, last probably 24 hours, you get this surge of enrollments, and there's this last minute scrambling to make sure we've got enough teaching assistants and get everyone plugged in. But we managed to do it. My role involves, I have been a teaching assistant at times. I have a lot of interaction with the teaching assistants for the school. Amazing people. They're all so passionate for Jesus and passionate about the ministry and raising up disciples. We run a student connect group. I help to lead that with one of our students, Stephen Eichner. So that's a monthly meeting that's been going since about middle of 2020. So we invite all of the current students, or the ones that have been enrolled in the last, say, 12 months. So we get them coming along to these meetings, and that's a space for them to ask questions and just discuss matters of the spirit and deliverance, whatever they want to talk about, with a group of like-minded people. And they find that's really helpful, especially ones that are isolated and attending cessationist churches or whatever. So that's one of the aspects of our school. I
think that's important for people to understand, is because there's so many different things, different styles that people have, where it's just like, oh, well, we're going to buy this video. But that's kind of why I was going towards that, is because this is really an immersive experience for people. There's a community of people that's gathered around them. You're helping to facilitate that. There's teaching assistants that they can go to and talk to. There's, I would say, different points along the course that they're able to interact with a lot of different folks. And really that's how we learn so much in this way of ministry, is learning from others. And hey, I'm running into this problem, or, I'm seeing this, what's everybody else doing? And so you're allowing them to meet with people on the journey as well. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. And we have our activation groups, or we call them cohort groups. And so they're running as part of our school. So the students get to interact with each other, with the teaching assistants. It's all part of the disciple making process. And and also with the Orbis Prayer Ministry Network. So I'm a prayer minister in that. We have case conferences that Ken attends them, and we discuss confidentially, we discuss different cases and get to bounce off each other. All of the prayer ministers have been trained through our school. So it gives us something to aim for. And it's been an incredible experience, actually, being part of that prayer ministry network and praying for people from all over the world, different countries, a lot of deliverance, a lot of curse breaking, a lot of inner healing, lots of testimonies of physical healing. It's been, there's a lot going on, Grant.
Well, and I think it's so wonderful, because when people ask me, like, how do I get better in this? And how do I always tell them, it's just, you got to get the at-bats. You just got to start praying for people and start doing it. And so this is such a great opportunity that people can experience and get into the game, so to speak, and begin to start praying. And, what was it, Ken? John Wimber said, once you pray for the first couple hundred, then you can talk to us about what works, what doesn't work, and all of that. And so this is a way to get to praying for a lot of people, for people that may not be able to go on ministry tours or whatever. So I just think it's important that people know and understand what an incredible resource this is, that's offered to them, and so that they can take advantage of it. So
the thing we're trying to do is we're trying to create, as Joe said, we're trying to create a community, because there are a lot of people who are isolated. They live in, we've got one person who's actually very much a part of what we do and who we are, who lives on a farm in a very remote area of New South Wales. And there's just no churches anywhere around her that are even close to what we talk about or do. And she tries in her own context to engage with that. She is a church goer. We aren't trying to steal sheep out of churches, but we've given her an alternate venue to live this life of the supernatural disciple that probably wouldn't be available to her absent this. And we have people who are from some, I'll just say, some unusual countries who join us as well, and they wouldn't really have much opportunity where they are. And even within countries where, like the United States or Germany or England or something, we have a fair number of students who, for one reason or another, they're not plugged into a community. They might have to go a long way to find it, or maybe they tried, but they just didn't click with those people, whatever. So we've created, I guess, in a way, these are like micro churches or cell churches, but we're not trying to go around the need for a visible living church in a community that everybody can see. But we are trying to be sure that people can be connected to this life of discipleship, whether or not they're in a church that offers that.
Yeah, that's so important, and it's such good work. So thank you, Joe, for all that you're doing. I know that it's as someone who also works with Ken, we're really doing the Lord's work, and in being around Ken all the time is just who knows what you're going to get into. But we thank you. We thank you for your service. Joe and I were talking before you jumped on here, Ken. We serve at the pleasure of Ken Fish. That's what people say. We serve at the pleasure of the governor or the king. And so, but no, such great work, and it's such great ministry. And how can people get involved? I know you just mentioned we're launching a new course. What's the best way that they can access and get more information on this?
Go to the Orbis School of Ministry website. So it's orbissm.com. And you can find that through the Orbis Ministries website as well. There's an OSM page. So there's a Discovering Evangelism course, which is the top course on the homepage of the orbissm.com website. So you can try that out, try before you buy. There's videos of Ken teaching, there's notes. If you like it, we'd love for you to enroll in winning souls and making disciples. 101, that's the first one in the series. There's 102, 103 coming after it. And in the second half of this year, we're sort of doing some repeat courses. So we're not launching a new course later on this year. We're going to run Heal as Jesus Healed. He Restores My Soul, our inner healing course, Breaking Bondage, the Deliverance course, and Prophesy with the Prophets. So we're going to run those again with cohort groups and webinars, give people a chance to catch up if they've missed them the first round or the second round. And then next year, Ken's just finished recording a new course, which will be an advanced level course, and we'll release that early next year. But yes, orbissm.com. We'd love to connect with you.
Orbissm.com. Well, thank you so much for all that you're doing. And you guys really are making disciples. It's such a cool thing to see. And so we're so thankful for that. Ken, anything else you want to add before we land the plane here?
No, I think that gives everybody a very good overview of Jo and how she came to us. I consider her a sent one, not just a random employee. And I'm very grateful, Jo, that you not only have joined us and have been working with us now for a while, but I'm also glad you joined us on the show and got a chance to tell your story.
Thank you very much for having me, both of you. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of God is Not a Theory with Ken Fish. We'll be right back the same time, same place next week with another piping hot, fresh out of the oven episode of God is Not a Theory.
If you are interested in exploring courses with us at Orbis School of Ministry, click on the link in the description of this podcast or go to orbissm.com. You can also send any school-related inquiries to our registrar, Jo McKay, at joe@orbisministries.org. That's JO@orbisministries.org.